good morning, good afternoon. We're very excited to have you here joining us today for this Regional Innovation Hubs, the presentation that we're going to have. My name is Cristina Navarrete. I'm a private sector specialist at the World Bank, and we have together with us also Ife Adebayo, who is a senior advisor to the Office of the Vice President on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So we are going to start by having Ife doing a short presentation about the work that the Office of the Vice President is doing in innovation hubs in Nigeria. We were hoping to have the presentation from Nneka, who is the director of the Dalberg office in Nigeria. We're having some technology issues, so we'll see whether we can get her here. And then I'll move into presenting the call for proposals that we're doing as part of a World Bank project, the Growth and Entrepreneurship, the Growth and Employment Project, and I will talk more about that during my presentation. So over to you, Ife.
So as Christina said, my name is Ife Adebayo. I advise the Vice President on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And I'll just give us a quick background into what this whole project is about and why we're doing this process. So when we came into office, when the government came into office, and one of the key things that the Vice President and Mr. President actually were really interested in was to support technology innovation, to support Nigerians who are coming up with technology solutions to solve local problems. So the whole idea was local solutions to local problems. But we also observed that because of the peculiarities of our country, because what you have in the southwest is different from what you have in the northwest, different from the northeast, different from the north central, we decided that it was important to understand what the innovation ecosystem in each region really was and what the specific issues, what the specific focus within each region should be. So we started having the conversation that what's the best way to go about this, and how do you ensure they are supporting innovation, not just in Lagos, not just in Abuja, but across the whole country? How do you ensure that the guy in Port Harcourt or Cross River who has a beautiful tech idea also gets the same amount of support and is able to also receive the same amount of get the same amount of reach, as the guy in Lagos? So we decided, sitting with the Vice President and the Minister of Communications, we looked at the various issues and we decided that we were going to establish innovation hubs in each of the regions. As many of you will be aware, this has been attempted before. There were plans there were actually projects by government that was centered around something similar in the past. But what we then looked at was, what's the best way to ensure that this works? What's the best way to ensure that there's a positive spin to this? And what we came up with was that, the best way to ensure that this works is to ensure that we work with the private sector, which is you that are here listening to us. So instead of running a government program and a government project, we decided that what government's position should be setting the standards, setting the framework, but instead allowing the private sector to run it. So basically looking for people who, with or without government, would have done this anyway, but with government support are now able to do more and reach a lot more people. That's why we decided that we're going to have one in each of the geopolitical zones, and we're going to work directly with the private sector. Also, to ensure that we had, a proper baseline for what we were doing, we then had conversations with the World Bank GEM and the FID, and said, look, we need to fund a process that does an analysis of the innovation ecosystem, but not just the innovation ecosystem, the economic realities in each region, so that we're not just starting innovation hubs, we're starting hubs that are focused on specific issues within each region. And so there was a DFID-funded program that was run by Dalberg and Accenture that came up with a framework that is titled the Catalyzing Growth in Nigeria through Regional Innovation. And I'm sure you should have received the links to that project now. Nneka of Dalberg was supposed to be with us to present this. I don't know if Nneka is in. If not, I'll just go ahead with the presentation of the project. Okay, so it looks like Nneka is not here. So I'll just rush through. I'll just go through this project. So the Dalberg report.
We have NECA.
Is NECA here?
So we won't be able to see NECA. Yeah, we won't be able to see her, but she will be doing the presentation of the report and research. So
super. Okay, so that's good. So Uneka is here, and she's going to run us through the report, through the Dalberg Accenture report, and that's going to give you all a better idea of what we're looking to do. But just to close, what we're looking for here are people that can run programs within their regions that is going to have a massive impact on the region's economy and also on the region's innovation ecosystem. So for us, what is going to be key, what we're going to be looking for are people who have the required experience and required resources to be able to do this. People that can pick on what's happening within their regions and build success stories out of it. Because what will be success for us will be to be able to look back in 5 years' time and say, we ran this program, we ran this project, and these are the various companies that have come out of it. These are the various ideas that have come out of it. This is the amount of impact that we've been able to have on the Nigerian economy. That's as a key focus for us. So I'll hand over to NECA now to present the DFID funded reports. Thank you.
NECA, we'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introductions, Isa and Christina. This is NECA, as I am a partner at Dalberg, which is a strategy consulting firm. We supported the Office of the Vice President over a number of months from 2016 into 2017, specifically looking at a range of different areas. One of them was trying to understand what's happening in terms of innovation and the innovation ecosystem in Nigeria. The second one was really understanding what does this mean for what something like an innovation hub can do for Nigeria, particularly linked to some of their interest in job creation, but of course linked as well to some of the broader questions around economic growth, the future of work, etc. In doing so, we're able to look globally at some examples, and so mapped a number of innovation hubs in Europe, Africa, Asia, and Latin America to try and pull out some insights that can help influence Nigeria's story. We then, of course, had to look within Nigeria, across the regions, to understand what's happening in terms of innovation and where might innovation hubs play a role in terms of innovation in Nigeria, job creation, and a whole host of other potential benefits that innovation hubs can bring. So what I'll do today is share our thoughts and perspectives based on the report that we developed and based on the study that we conducted in partnership with Accenture Development Partnerships. So based on the job creation report, which was developed last year, which was really a strategy for job creation and implementation in Nigeria, the job creation unit within the Office of the Vice President really wanted to understand how best to catalyze tech-driven innovation through hubs. Now, one of the things we said here is that it's not just technology-driven innovation that can be driven, but much broader innovation. So let's understand, first, what are the hubs globally doing, as well as the ecosystem in Nigeria? So we looked across a few areas from the enabling environment, so that's policy, infrastructure, and networks. We looked at supply, looking at things like talent, R&D, financing, and investment. Then we also looked at demand. So really, where is the demand for innovation? Where are the consumers, if you will, of innovation? As I mentioned, did a regional assessment. And what we wanted to do here was, of course, not go to the entire country, but do get a sense of what's going on across the country. And so did look at a number of states and specifically some cities within those states very specifically. And I'll share some of our findings from that. So I think one of the big things that came up is that innovation hubs can really take the form of a range of archetypes that help to seed innovation. And this is particularly helpful where some of the broader ecosystem elements are having challenges. And so we identified 7 different archetypes of innovation hubs, or types of hubs that we've seen existing globally. And some of these we've seen in Nigeria, but not all of them. So nodes, those are really central points in an ecosystem that help with networking, collaboration, and learning. They don't necessarily have to have a physical structure, but do really focus on that convening and facilitation of partnerships. Accelerators, and I think some of you may be familiar with these, where you actually have a specific set program and oftentimes a working space and environment where you can bring expertise, networks, and resources to scale, oftentimes in a very set period of time as well. Research centers, and these might be, for example, places where innovation is actually coming out, but where you have some infrastructure, talent, and you do see innovation come through, oftentimes scientific breakthroughs. Maker spaces, where you might have both R&D, technology, some prototyping happening in the same location, but is quite hands-on, does have equipment, if you will, that will support that innovation. Science and technology parks, and here, usually located somewhat outside of cities, locations that help to really focus on one or a few topics. So these might be, for example, biotech corridors or those types of things where you have very specific dedicated space and a number of different organizations, whether companies, research associations, universities, working together on similar topics. Innovation districts, and these are dense urban spaces, really where many people are coming together across both places to live, work, and play. And then finally, virtual hubs, and these, again, don't have necessarily a physical infrastructure, but have more of an online infrastructure where you have a virtual platform where you can network, provide training, acceleration opportunities, etc., but again, not in person. So that's an overview. I'm not going to spend as much time on the rest of the presentation, but did want to share that I think there is a potential in Nigeria from a number of these different types of hubs. So definitely something to consider moving forward is how we bring these types of hubs into the country where it makes sense. So the next thing we want to talk about is really what did we pull out, if you will, in terms of principles that guide the success and impact of innovation hubs globally. So one is, demand. Anchoring on demand is critical. Here what we're trying to say is that if you build something that doesn't make sense for the location or for the problems of the location, it's really not going to be effective. You need to find a way to link in both the hub activities with what the ecosystem really needs, as well as try and understand where the demand exists. So this could be, how do we connect into an e-government initiative, or how do we solve the problems that smallholder farmers in Plateau State are facing, but really trying to understand what problem is the hub trying to solve and making sure that it's really based on that problem. The next one is technology is important, but again, it doesn't have to be end-all and be-all. So I think it's an important input and output. Oftentimes we'll see the technology infrastructure needing to be there, as well as in terms of supporting R&D or market development. So it is important in terms of the innovation ecosystem. And this can be anything from the software to actual just making sure you have internet connectivity. Then what we wanted to share is, innovation hubs can be used for a range of purposes, and I think we shared this a bit in the archetype slide, but really the question is, how can you be enablers of short and long-term goals, whether it's for the development of Nigeria, a specific state, or a specific community? And then finally, stakeholder participation is quite critical for success, in part because innovation hubs and specifically building the innovation ecosystem will help with public sector initiatives, private sector interests, and perhaps hiring needs or product needs, as well as with the development sector in terms of issues around health or access to financial services. So really understanding the ecosystem in which the innovation hub is operating will be important to the success of the innovation hub. So globally, we did look at a range of different examples of innovation hubs, some of them which we've listed here, and wanted to share some of those learnings in terms of the development of innovation hubs. So the slide before did highlight a few of the key principles. I think these are some lessons that do link in, so I'll probably go a bit quicker over this one. But the first is around establishing the intended outcomes of the hub. So here, this is something that One North in Singapore did very well, which was saying, look, what is our mission? How are we going to communicate this? What is the specific type of innovation and sectors that we want to focus on? And that can both create clarity for your own business model, but also for the people that you want to engage in the community, investors, entrepreneurs, to really say, what is it that you're trying to achieve? And then people can figure out how they can support that real clear mission. The second sort of lesson is around a partner. So thinking about potential partners in terms of program delivery and building the ecosystem. So this is something we saw from MAGIC, the Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Center in Malaysia, of course, where the government might not, for example, have all the expertise and resources, and this is in the case the Malaysian government was driving this initiative. So the question is, how do you bring in other sources of talent and expertise that make sense? And so this might be where you have an idea to do an innovation hub, perhaps, I'm not sure, on something like mechanics. So maybe not all of the tools and skills that you need as an innovation hub are in your location. For example, you might have a virtual hub as a mechanic. But then perhaps you think about existing partners across the country or in your location that can work together with people offline to support. So I think there's a question about how do you bring in partners from a range of sectors into the innovation hub to make sure that it's the most effective. Then the question is, of course, proximity. So how do you think about interactions itself? We did find while virtual hubs are quite important and helpful, I think particularly in areas where in-person meetings can be challenging, whether due to distance or otherwise, physical proximity and that human interaction can be useful. So even where you have virtual hubs, you will still see meetups that allow people to come together in their communities. So finding a way for the proximity of the hub to be close to exciting events, research facilities, or otherwise, I think does help to really build and spark creativity and innovation. The next question is around planning for sustainability from the outset. And here we saw this very strongly from iHub in Kenya, where they didn't just necessarily have one way to think about, let's say, revenue, but really were thinking about how do we create a commercially sustainable model. So in Kenya, they did look at multiple revenue lines, and each of the revenue lines had a very clear value. So it wasn't that people were just paying for nothing, but they were actually getting something out of the hub experience that was worth it for the revenue. So I think that's something to consider as you look at how you'll actually develop more sustainable hubs. The next one is around developing innovation hubs. I think you need to keep in mind that they're not necessarily going to solve all of the ecosystem challenges. So one innovation hub might not solve all the issues with, let's say, transportation infrastructure in Nigeria. But they can, I think, address some of the issues that we are seeing in society. So it can be focused on solving very specific issues, but are not going to necessarily solve all of the issues in Nigeria. So I think being very specific on what you're trying to solve will help to really focus. And then finally, I think the policy angle is quite important. And so what we saw in Startup Chile, and this is another government-led but private sector interested innovation hub, is that the policy environment is quite important, and finding ways to link closely into the government objectives and policies, I think does help support a stronger foundation for the innovation hubs to grow and to thrive. So just a few reflections from our global study, and I think do also want to talk about what this means for Nigeria, And so specifically, what we looked at across Nigeria is that there is a strong foundation for talent, and specifically on the demand side, of course, given some of the government initiatives, given some of the private sector initiatives, and initiatives from small and medium enterprises, but there are still a number of gaps around financing, around networks, around infrastructure, and of course we can't forget the infrastructure, and on the policy side. So this is just an overview of what we found, but as I noted, really on demand, starting to see some positive growth and potential there, as well as on talent. I mean, the number of people joining this webinar and the amount of excitement around the innovation ecosystem, and the fact that Nigeria is one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world, I think really does paint a picture of a strong potential. I think the challenges that we're seeing are around the policy, so specifically how do we encourage startups and SMEs, how do we look at investment promotion, and how do we coordinate different policies at the state level and the federal level. Infrastructure, we can't leave without, of course, mentioning the gap in terms of electricity demand and supply, as well as questions about how we can deliver electricity and support our improved road networks, etc. And financing, which does come up quite a bit in the conversations around spurring innovation, but specifically, how do we get finance into the appropriate hands in terms of startups, and how do we think about getting capital outside of Lagos and Abuja, which are where most of the up-and-coming venture capital and other early-stage capital is really being domiciled. There's a whole range of other ideas and thoughts, so feel free to read through, but I think really what we're trying to say is Nigeria's here, we're ready, there's a lot of excitement, but now how do we unlock the potential that we're seeing driven by some of the elements of demand and talent and the emergence of networks that are coming up? We also, talked to a whole range of entrepreneurs, ecosystem actors who were talking to us about their experience, and I think I'll focus here really on the role of the hub operators. And so here, one of the things we heard very clearly is that hub operators are really relying on co-working space rents, events, training fees, and grants for revenue. And of course, there's a whole range of other streams that they could bring in, but that's really where the core revenue is coming from. I think the other one that we heard very strongly is that for the physical hubs, rather than the virtual hubs, you really do need a critical mass of resident startups for sustainability. And that was one of the challenges outside of Lagos and Abuja. I don't think this means that it's not possible, but that identifying those potential initial, or let's call them anchor tenants, is quite important as you think about how you might develop a hub in Nigeria. I think my time is probably almost up, but I will just perhaps share a few final reflections over the last few slides. So I think one is that we did look at a regional diagnostic, and I think each of the different types of states, and these are just examples, you do need to think about what makes sense for your city, town, or state in terms of the offering of the hub. So there are some places that are much more ready for innovation in terms of the different elements we mentioned around supply, demand, and enabling environment. And there are others that are quite early stage, where innovation activities might be ongoing, but there's a number of elements of the innovation ecosystem that are underdeveloped. I think what could be interesting in each of these areas is to say, what's not working yet in my location? Where is there a role for an innovation hub to really unlock potential for innovation in Nigeria, and specifically to address the issues of my community, of my sector of interest, etc. But how do we target specific challenges in those very early stage places? How do we really build up the existing and emerging innovation activities in other more sort of nascent areas and locations in the country? And then I would just share as a final thought that really does make sense to look at a range of different partners where you can work with them to identify demand and ensure that the private sector is critical and important in your hub design. How do you identify different incentives that will help your hub to grow? And then finally, consider opportunities for long-term funding and the role of the government in the hubs that you're looking at. So those are just some initial reflections from the research that we did and from the strategy and analysis that we did over the last few months. I'm open to questions at the end of the session and look forward to sharing more of our thoughts with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Nneka. I'm very, very glad that we could finally connect you. So based on the presentation that Nneka just did, what I'm going to be discussing today is the specific support from the World Bank that we've been providing to the Office of the Vice President on this initiative around innovation hubs. During the last 9 months, I would say we've been working very closely with the Office of the Vice President, providing technical advice, leveraging the World Bank experience and research on the space in innovation hubs, and also looking into ways in which the World Bank could be supporting this initiative. What I will focus on the presentation, and I know a lot of you are very eager to hear more about, is the call for proposals that we launch to support the setup of expansion of existing innovation hubs in Nigeria. And this is supported by the Growth and Employment Project, which is a project implemented by the Ministry of Industry, Trade, and Investment in Nigeria. So the outline of my presentation, what I'll be focusing on is, first of all, I'll provide a snapshot of what the Growth and Employment Project is all about, what is its objectives, and what has it achieved so far. I will then move into specific considerations and criteria for the Innovation Hubs call for proposals. Thirdly, we'll just provide, building on what Nneka has just mentioned about Innovation Hubs lessons learned. I'll just summarize some specific tips that we have for those of you interested in applying for the Innovation Hubs. And then we'll have space to answer any questions that you may have to Ife, Nneka, or myself at the end of the webinar. We started a bit late, so we'll probably extend by 15 minutes for those of you that can stay with us a bit longer. So let me see if I can just go into the next slide. So the Growth and Employment Project, as I once mentioned, is implemented by the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, and is in alignment with the government of Nigeria commitment to diversify the economy, support high growth sectors, to create jobs and bring competitive advantage to the economy. The key focus of the Growth and Employment Project, which was started in 2013, is to support micro, small, and medium enterprises in a set of high growth selected sectors. It does this by two key pillars that the project has, and this is what you can see right now in the slide. The first pillar is specifically supporting private sector organizations, so these are MSMEs. And the second pillar is by providing in-depth research, market analysis of the sectors supported by the GEM project. And I'll talk to you in a few seconds about those sectors. So when it comes to the specific support that the Growth and Employment Project provides to companies, there's different type of services that it provides. It provides training, so face-to-face and online training to these companies. It also provides consulting services specific for the type of companies that are being supported, very tailored to the sectors that these companies belong to. It also provides advisory services in terms of the market regulation, the market access, and key consideration for these businesses. And also, of course, a key component that a lot of you were already mentioning in the chat is around the access to finance. So it also provides access to finance to these firms. All these type of services provided to firms are provided to the big platforms, which stands for the Business and Innovation Growth Platform. And currently there is 65,000 businesses that are part of this platform that are going through different stages of the support that the GEM project is provided. The second pillar is the pillar where it is focused much more on the sectors that is providing It provides intelligence, it gathers intelligence, market research, industry analysis, and it brings together private sector, public sector, and academia to research and to discuss about these issues and then bring recommendations to the GEM activities. So now I'll be moving into the sector. As I mentioned, the project started in 2013, and through that project there was a strong research and a strong component on taking a look to what are those potential sectors in Nigeria that should be supported. So what you can see in the screen are the 5 sectors. You can find more information on the big platform website. Essentially, these are construction, entertainment, ICT and digital, like manufacturing, and hospitality and tourism. So both the cluster work that is being carried out, as well as the interventions and support of firms, are related to these sectors. And therefore, moving into the call for proposal for the innovation hubs, we are expecting that the innovation hubs will support one or more of these sectors. So going back to the access to finance component and the part that is important to us today, there's 5 different windows on access to finance, on grant finance that the GEM project provides. The first 3 that you can see on the left-hand side of your screen is the equity matching and performance grants, and those are specifically grants that are intended for firms, for individual companies. The one that is really of interest for us is the innovative grants. These are large-size grants that are provided for public or private institutions, and it's under this innovative grant that we have launched the call for proposal for the innovation. By the way, all these slides and the webinar is recorded, so you will be able to watch it again and go through the presentation. So now I've been explaining what are the objectives of the GEM project. We've also discussed the 2 components and what are the sectors that are part of it. So now I would like to turn into the specificities of the call for proposal. And hopefully we'll have time to answer a lot of the questions that I'm already seeing popping up in the chat. So the call for proposal for the innovation hubs, and a lot of this has already been mentioned by Ife and NECA, is to try to encourage, to spark further innovation activity into the Nigeria regions. It is not intended to create new activities or reinvent the wheel. What it's really trying to do is to leverage existing innovation activities, coordinate better ongoing activities, and support the expansion of those activities. Is really linked to the GEM project, so obviously there has to be an emphasis on supporting private sector. There has to be an emphasis on improving the productivity of these companies, on creating jobs, income-raising opportunities for youth and self-employed. So that's really the key objectives of the project. One thing that we are trying to encourage is also to promote partnerships and collaboration between key stakeholders in the regions. So if you're an individual organization, public or private, you can apply to the call for proposal. However, we are encouraging partnership and we are encouraging consortium to apply in case it does make sense for you. So the call for proposal is the funded that is being allocated is between 100,000 equivalent US dollars to $1 million US dollars for a period of 18 months. We are supporting 5 different geopolitical zones in Nigeria. Those are Southeast, Southwest, North Central, Northeast, and Northwest. So a lot of conversations going around in the chat, and we've also received a lot of questions offline about the inclusion of South-South region. There is a rationale for not including South-South region, and that rationale Ife will tell you more about, but this is really because the government is right now working on a new plan for the Niger region. There is already some allocation for doing some work around innovation hubs in that region, and that will come soon, and we will wait to see what the Niger plan will be about. So who can apply? If you're interested in applying, can you apply? You have to be a registered entity in Nigeria. That's the first requirement. You will see the type of entities that are allowed for application in the application form, but essentially you just need to be registered in Nigeria. Obviously, you cannot be insolvent, declare bankrupt, or have any legal issues ongoing. The matching fund, this is a point where I would like to spend a few seconds explaining it. As you know, the diversity of the regions in Nigeria, the innovation entrepreneurship ecosystem is quite different. So the call for proposal has been adapted, and the matching contribution has been adapted to the needs and the levels of development of the different regions in Nigeria. The matching contribution therefore differs from region to region. For the northeast, for the southeast, southwest, and non-central, there has to be a 50-50 contribution, meaning that if you are putting a proposal, 50% of the matching contribution will have to come for you. On the other hand, we have the northwest region, where the proposal, there should be only a matching contribution of 20% if you are intending to set up or to build on existing innovation hubs that may exist in Northwest. I also saw a few questions regarding what is eligible as matching contribution. This will be assessed on a case-by-case basis, but typically any facilities that you may have, debt that you may have, any investment that you may be able to put into staff salaries, another kind of support for running the innovation hubs, those will be considered as eligible matching grants. You just have to make sure that depending on the region that you're applying to, you can make sure that you are compiling with the minimum requirement for the matching grant. And then, as I mentioned before, you have to be operating in one of the 5 GEM supporting sectors. So now, how to apply? First of all, I would say that the application deadline has been extended till May 26th, so you still have a bit over a week to apply. To apply, everything has to be done online, so you will have to go to the big portal platform, link on the call for proposal for the innovation hubs, and there you will be able to download the call for proposal and have all the details on the requirements for applying for the innovation hubs. If you're interested in submitting an application, you need to log into the platform, and you need to do all your application online. No applications that are sent via email won't be eligible and won't be acceptable. So I encourage you to start already going through the portal, starting filling in the application form. If you're interested, you can save things and start working as soon as possible on the proposal. All documents you can, at the end of the application form, you will be able also to upload documents and also download the financial template that is required as part of the call for proposal. So quickly on tips, so I wanna give some space for the questions, the Q&A. Tips for applicants. You have here a list of 7 things that we put together. I'll just focus on 4 things that I think are critical for the hubs, and which will definitely be considered for the criteria for selection of the winners. So first of all, ensure adaptation to local circumstances. I think NECA already explained very much in detail this point. I just want to emphasize the importance of doing a feasibility study, on making sure that the hub is building on the competitive advantages, on the market opportunities that we see in the region. So a feasibility study will include understanding what are those market opportunities, what are those market failures, why is it needed an innovation hub, is the innovation hub the best solution for what we want to do, what are other business or development services or organizations providing, and what is the value added that we add to this, or how can we strengthen collaboration. So strong emphasis on the rationale and the adaptation to the local circumstances. Then the second one is around identify a valid business model. This is very much related to what I just said. It is important to make sure that there is that financial sustainability around the business model. So we want to encourage participants to think about not only the the financial sustainability in the short term, but also in the long term, thinking about potential or additional sources of revenue that you may have, cost that you may incur in down the line, and how are you thinking about that sustainability of the appropriate business model for the local conditions. Then on the right management, this goes without saying, but I think we have to start thinking about innovation hubs as private entities. So in a sense, we will have hubs that are in incubation stage, we'll have hubs that are a bit more developed, but we need that private sector orientation. We need hubs that are professionally managed. There is a team that has a private sector background and experience and can tap into additional resources once needed. One of the successes that we see of these innovation hubs is when you have the management team that also hires part-time experts for support on specific sectors, and that can also keep a pulse on what is happening in the rest of the world when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship-related activities. So also very, very important, the management, the team that you will bring into the innovation hub, both from a technical point of view and also from a managerial point of view. And then the fourth point is about proven communication and engagement with the stakeholders, key stakeholders. It is important that we are leveraging what already exists in this space, that we have an active way of communicating with stakeholders, and this is important not only for the firms that the hub maybe support, but also for the hubs itself to be able to develop that network to be connected to other hubs. So I think from my side, that's all. I would go into the Q&A. These are some questions that we received, but I'll just give the word to Ife, maybe to summarize some of the questions that participants were asking. Ife, we can't hear you right now. Maybe you have to unmute your... Maybe can you try to unmute the microphone if that's still muted? Having some issues. So Ife, you will have to go to the top of the screen and to click on the microphone button and connect it. There is the audio and there is the microphone screen.
What is I think you can hear us.
Maybe
can you hear now?
Take advantage
Are you with us?
to introduce to other classes that are...
Okay.
You can't hear us.
Yeah, but they could hear me well before. So I'm wondering what has changed.
Christina, if you can't hear us, maybe you should go ahead and take some of the questions. You can hear us now, right?
Okay,
great.
So I think that the question that has been most recurrent has been the question about the South-South. So I need to address that clearly and make it clear that the South-South has not been excluded. However, there is a federal government project currently ongoing, which is to present a master plan for the development of the Niger Delta. So we are planning to infuse this in that master plan, and that's why because one of the key things that we focused on, as I said earlier, is to ensure that we're not just building something, we're not just working on a project blindly. That's why we've done a lot of analysis. That's why Dalberg did the work they did, going to each of the regions, having conversations, speaking to the business people, because we want to ensure that we're building hubs that are able to provide local solutions to local problems. So for us, if there is a Niger Delta master plan being developed by government, it's essential that whatever we do is hinged into that master plan, and that's why for now we have the south sort of on hold. However, budgetary allocations have been made so every region is covered. There's a budgetary allocation available in the federal government budget for 2016 and also for 2017 that ensures that each region there's no region that's going to be left behind. So I just want to make it clear that we're not leaving the Niger Delta behind, but if the government is currently working to consolidate and harmonize the efforts of the various agencies focused on development of the Niger Delta, it wouldn't work well for us to be running a project if we are not working with all these guys, the NDDC, the Amnesty Office, the Ministry of Petroleum, NNPC, everybody that is working on projects in the Niger Delta. We need to harmonize and ensure that whatever we are doing is in tandem with what the government is planning. So that's why the South is not included in this particular RFP. However, they will be well catered for and well covered. If there are specific questions on the which of the questions have been going out, so I think that's been the most recurrent question, really. Apart from those who have issues, with registering and all. But I have Bello and Undubisi with me here from the GEM office. So if there are also specific questions that you guys have for them, I guess they could also respond.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I have a couple of two technical questions. One is someone was asking the multiple appearance of a partner in the bid, especially BDS, Business Development Service Providers, who will partner with a lead bid, and maybe they have been approached by more than one company. I think the simple answer to that is, so long as you are not the one that is bidding, you are free to partner and bid with as many as that approach you. At the end of the day, eventually, the winner will be the one that will partner with you. However, partnership to us means all documentation provided, authorization, and MOU signed between two partners before we recognize anyone as a partner. The second question is to do with the closure of Big Portal, which we're working on. We closed the portal long ago because of the fact that we have a large number of applicants and we're working on. But as far as the problem to log in this morning and yesterday are concerned, we're working on that with the ICT team, and we'll get it sorted out. The last question I have is someone asking whether an enterprise can also apply, and I think that question is been answered clearly in the document. All we needed is a formally registered enterprise from a recognized authority. It doesn't have to be a limited liability. I don't know whether if you want to add something to that.
That's fine.
So these are the ones. Maybe you have any more questions?
For those who are having issues with logging on, some people can log on apparently, and some people are having issues. We've spoken with the ICT team, and they say that there's really actually no problem. But what I would say is, if you're having problems and you need some guidance into logging in, please send a mail to innovationhub@bigportal.org.ng, and this evening we'll try and walk you through the registration process.
I guess that's it, unless there are questions that we didn't address.
I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and also add on a few questions that I was just seeing on the chat. So we had Misha who was asking about the deadline. if the deadline will be again extended. Unfortunately not. So the deadline is, as we were saying before, May 26th. This is a hard deadline. So if you're intending to apply, you should start as soon as possible on that. Then I think on the matching grant components, I saw a few questions there. I think that the latest one was from Emeka, who was asking, can you please provide more clarity on that? So on that point, as I was saying, it will be done on a one-on-one basis, and it will be the team that will be doing the assessment of the applications. They will determine whether matching grants are eligible, the matching contribution that the applicant is putting forward is eligible or not. But maybe to give you an example, for Northwest, we're saying that 80% of the total project cost will be provided by GEM project, which means that the matching contribution of the applicant should be 20%. Then, as I was saying, we can have cash investments that could be applicable and being part of the matching contribution, and then any facilities that you may have, any equity investment, any other asset that you may have to prove that matching contribution. So just make sure that you go through the call for proposal, read well that, and if you have any questions, as Wale was saying, you can just send an email to the email that we provided. Then one of the things on the big platform, I had that issue. Sometimes it goes to the spam, the verification of the email address. So just go to your spam as well, because the email may be there.
Shall I answer some of the questions around the ecosystem? So Esther has asked specifically a question around the level of development in states being very different. So for example, you can't compare Abuja's level of development to Kogi State. Are the disparities being taken into consideration in the stats? And will it be taken into consideration in terms of providing access to the innovation hubs? And I would say two thoughts there. So one is that we also did note those disparities, and particularly around the ecosystem for innovation. How strongly developed is the ecosystem? So in my presentation, shared a bit about how we were classifying the different archetypes, the states that we visited as examples. So you have some very ready states, and there we put Lagos and Abuja, and then you have some nascent states that are up and coming, and then some that are really pre-innovation, where a number of issues exist in the ecosystem. And this means that your approach needs to be tailored to the specificities of either the location or the issues that you're addressing. And as Christina has explained, there is a very strong differential as well in terms of the level of funding that would need to be provided in terms of co-financing in your proposal, and that does take into account those regional disparities. I think the other question that came up was around, do we need to focus on a physical location or not? I would say it's not to say that I meant to focus on the fact that you can have a hub that is not having a physical location, but I guess trying to suggest some creativity in how you think about your hub. So in your location, is it really necessary to have a physical location to spur innovation in the sector or in the set of issues that you're focusing on? So one, for example, is some of the locations we looked at was actually a humanitarian hub, and that one was more of a virtual hub, where you might have some existing pockets and you have meetups, etc., but most of the content was not really being provided in too many physical locations. And so I think it really depends on what's the issue that you're solving. Is there a geography that you're interested in? And even, for example, perhaps for the fashion industry, which is one that was mentioned here, perhaps you have, for example, access to equipment, on off hours somewhere, and then you have meetups that happen around the fashion industry, and then some other training centers actually providing training. Perhaps it's in a similar geographic location, and perhaps not. What I'm trying to say is think wisely on what an innovation hub could actually look and feel like, It doesn't necessarily have to be, and you'll note I didn't mention any of the ones that exist in Nigeria. Of course, we went to many of them, but it doesn't have to look like one of the ones that exist here, because as I said at the beginning, there's a number of hubs and archetypes of hubs that exist globally that don't yet exist in Nigeria that could be of interest as you're exploring this.
After my exit, the one of certificate of 2015, tax certificate of 2015, I think it is important to know that we operate by the laws of Nigeria, and 2015 certificate would not be a valid document to show that one is up to date with his tax obligations. So 2016 certificate is what is required, or evidence of payment that is authenticated. So that's about tax. And then, yes, the business is clearly, the business CFP clearly stated this is meant for existing businesses that are in that field. So the question about could existing hub apply, I think is clearly answered in the document. Thank you. Hello.
Okay, I see that there's some more questions. I was just looking into the screen to see some more questions that are coming up. I hope the virtual hub answer that NECA just gave was sufficient. I think for us, just to emphasize that, we're really looking into supporting the regional economy. We're looking into seeing how this hub can support the innovation activity and bring different actors, support primarily SMEs. So in the sense that, the local context, and maybe the regional diversity or the outreach to different people provides a rationale for virtual hubs. I don't think that should be a bad idea. I think one should consider what are the different services that are needed for the type of clients that are going to be served. Then another question that I was just seeing before, maybe I'll just go back there, is on the new hub. If a new hub, I think Afolayan was asking whether a new hub can apply. Of course they can apply. I think in some of these regions, as NECA was saying, we're seeing that innovation hubs are still not there, and there's some good opportunities for setting up something. In other regions, I would say, like in Lagos State, we're seeing whether there is a lot of innovation already ongoing, especially when it comes to digital and ICT hubs. So that could be supporting existing hubs, or maybe thinking about other sectors that could be provided there. It's really, as I was saying, the emphasis is on the feasibility. It's on the making sure that there is an argument, there is a justification, a market failure that we're trying to fill in.
The deadline is going to be the 26th of May. Unfortunately, we will not be able to move this deadline because we're working with strict timelines ourselves to ensure that we can get this project off and running across each of the region as quickly as possible. So we know this is a tight deadline, but I guess it also shows that we're also looking for people that can work under stringent conditions and people who have the capacity to act. So we're looking for people, not people who require to be pushed, but people who are actually ready to go. So the more ready to go you are, of course, the better the better for us and for the project. So the deadline is going to be 26th of May, as initially stated. So I think that's the only. Oh, and there was also a question: are virtual hubs of benefit to this program? So I think NECA actually did a lot of explanation on that. I think it's pretty clear that it's. I mean, if you're able to justify why your focus is on remaining virtual, then yeah, why not? So it's basically going to be up to your plan and the sustainability and the on how effective we see the program is going to be.
Second to last, please.
Okay, and then there's one last question. Can a proposal be made for more than one location under a single company? So a single company. I think it's also clearly stated in the document that you've received that one company can only apply for one region as the lead applicant. However, if if you're applying from another region and partnering with someone who is the lead applicant or who needs your expertise or your experience, of course, that's also possible to apply as a supporting applicant from another region. So, Christina, I think that's all from here, from our end.
So there were a lot of questions through the chat. I think we answered most of the critical questions. If you still have questions that we may have not answered, please do not hesitate to send an email to the email address that is provided on the website. I'm really happy for this webinar. I want to thank NECA for being here today. I know from Lusaka it's been complicated, the connection. Ife, Bello, and Wale also, thank you so much for joining us from Abuja. I'm really thankful for the 63 or so participants that joined us today. We're here to see how we can best support your initiative, so please do not hesitate to send us an email if you want to find more research about more information about the research that the World Bank is doing in this space, or you have specific questions about the Dahlberg report or the Innovation Hub application. Please don't hesitate to call us, to send us an email. And a last request from our